Exclusive contracted novel by Feilu Novel Network. Summoning evil gods from Marvel, broken celestial bodies, a dead universe. Countless unobservable beings murmur between dimensions, the great king in black, the source of primordial chaos, the master of the future and time, the terror of the starry sky, the master of the abyss sea. Su-mu sighed lightly, countless stars instantly disappeared, and the praises and chants became even more magnificent. I really missed the simple and ordinary life at the beginning. Mie Ba. I haven't slept well lately and often have nightmares. I heard that many people, like me, suddenly died from the Ebony Throat living next door today. What worries me the most is that his fingers and 2 eyes disappeared out of thin air. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. Unidentifiable Objects, Seeking Collection, Flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In 1941, in the northeast of country, in early winter, in the border town of Ramsey. The temperature has dropped to -30, and the howling cold wind seems to be carrying a cold steel knife, as if it is about to wipe out all life on this land. Although this place harbors endless resources and is regarded as Russia's granary, it also has its violent and ruthless side. This is the Siberian plain, this is the land of tranquility. Soon, this will become a forbidden zone for life. But there is one organism that is not included, and that is humans. The strength of humanity lies in resistance, constant resistance, and the struggle against heaven and earth. They have created countless creations that can withstand the disasters of heaven and earth. A sturdy house, plush clothing, and hot radiators. What a great invention! Su-mu leaned comfortably against the radiator, greedily enjoying the warmth. The ghostly weather outside can make people particularly infatuated with warmth. Unfortunately, humans are not animals. They can hibernate by finding a warm place. Ding-dang. Su-mu reluctantly released the radiator, got up and opened the door. As expected, the landlord downstairs came to deliver breakfast. Su, this is your breakfast. Thank you for your hard work. Su-mu politely said and took the seemingly appetizing breakfast. As usual, the chubby landlord who looks like a bear should leave directly, and the conversation should come to an end. Strangely enough, the chubby landlord stood at the door motionless, with a hesitant expression. Is there anything else? Su-mu asked wisely. After hesitating for a moment, the chubby boss finally spoke up, have you had any nightmares lately? Su-mu's heart skipped a beat, but his face forced to remain calm. Why do you ask that? Oh, it's really strange. In the past few days, everyone around has been having nightmares, but when they wake up, they can't remember the content of the dream. This was already eerie enough, but something even more eerie happened this morning, causing many people to panic. The chubby landlord's eyes were scattered, and he didn't notice that Su-mu's expression was becoming increasingly unnatural. He continued, the tenant next door suddenly died last night. The officials said it was suicide, but why is his body covered in mucus and his eyes and 3 fingers are missing? The chubby landlord seemed to have thought of that scene, his expression even more dazed, and he began to murmur to himself, saying some strange words that were incomprehensible. I think you should take a good rest now, everything will be fine. Su-mu patted the landlord's shoulder to wake him up and comforted him. Ah, I'm sorry, I haven't slept well lately. It seems like I really should take a good rest. The landlord turned around and left, but that was clearly not right. Su-mu quickly closed the door, rushed in to wash his hands, took a splash of water, rubbed his face vigorously, and then suddenly looked up at the face covered in water droplets in the mirror. Surprisingly, it's true. The shock in his heart was indescribable. Su-mu originally did not belong to this place. The Earth he was on and the current Earth are 2 completely different worlds. As a newcomer to work, he didn't know why, so he took a nap during his lunch break and came here. Fortunately, he woke up at the train station in the city and was not frozen to death. Fortunately, Su Mu has a big heart, so he doesn't hesitate about things he doesn't understand. Fortunately, his second foreign language in college was Russian, so there were no barriers to communication. He first sold the longins on his wrist and then rented a house to settle down, intending to first gain a basic understanding of the world. Everything went smoothly. The news of Stark Industries successfully hosting the Tomorrow's World Expo in the newspaper is eye-catching. Su Mu easily knew that the world he was in was Marvel World. Fortunately, he knew Marvel well enough, so he was able to be carefree and not panic too much. But now, even if he had a big heart, he was about to jump out of his chest. He has the same dream every night when he falls asleep. In my dream, there is an endless and shattered universe. There is a eerie silver-gray giant dragon hovering over a huge star. The dragon's scales are made up of a pile of deformed and broken flesh wings, densely packed. It constantly devours each star, as if never satisfied. There is an indescribable insect-shaped monster with a huge size, resembling a giant amoeba. A face with green eyes peeks out from inside. A giant with a head resembling an octopus, a body resembling a human, and decaying bat wings on its back, swimming between celestial bodies. There is another existence that cannot be described or understood, giving people an absolute feeling of unknowability, indescribability, incomprehensibility, and disbelief. He was accompanied by an endless array of invisible and eerie creatures, holding various musical instruments and playing music that could not be heard. Terrifying. Strange. Evil. I can't understand. Strangely, Su Mu was not afraid in his dream. He knew he should be afraid, but he couldn't be afraid. He even felt that everything in front of him was so beautiful and harmonious. Chapter 2. The Ghost Era. Seeking Collection and Freshness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At first, he doubted whether this could be his own golden finger. After all, even time travel is real, and having a golden finger is also reasonable. He tried to touch and control, but he couldn't control anything except for the black mist around him. Now, he can finally confirm that the dream must be related to his golden finger. But how could it affect the people around us, and even cause lives? How should we control it? Damn it, it's not smart at all. After calming down, Su Mu spat and finally calmed down. Eating fatty meat paired with pickled cucumber and bread without any taste, thinking about how to control one's own abilities, at least finding a way to avoid harming the innocent. Finally, the most reliable way to think of it is to go to sleep and try things like blood dripping to recognize the master in your dreams. When Su Mu finished eating and fell asleep, a convoy of cars drove along the road connecting Ramsey City to the east. The fleet size is not small, with 5 personnel carriers following in addition to the sedans ahead. The convoy drove unobstructed into the city and stopped not far from Su Mu, right below the house where the mysterious death occurred last night. As soon as the car stopped, rows of soldiers with live ammunition quickly dispersed and surrounded the nearby area. The people on the sedan just got off. Petrovich was wearing a mink cloak and a military cap, with a very fierce appearance that was intimidating. He ignored the local officials who came forward and conducted a brief survey of the scene before speaking calmly. Are people nearby having nightmares? Yes, sir, most residents within a radius of 500 meters are having nightmares. The fierce man pondered for a moment, then turned around and walked out, only to give the final command when he re-entered the sedan. Take everyone within 500 meters back to the base and block this place. In the dark and damp underground base, Su Mu's expression was extremely painful. Yes, he was also caught. Although he wanted to shout for injustice like everyone else, he was a bit lacking in confidence. However, he later realized that it wasn't really important as shouting was useless. The one who shouted the most gruesomely was kicked several times. Now Su Mu can only hope that after these guys find no problems, they will let him go. Anyway, hundreds of people have been arrested, no matter what, we can't keep them locked up. Russia is very short of food in winter. However, in order to prevent these people from continuing the investigation, Sumu dared not continue to try recklessly in his dream. If there are any more moths, I'm afraid we won't be able to get out. Unfortunately, the direction of fate is always so unsatisfactory. Just below the cell where Sumu was being held, Petrovich read the materials in his hand and, after a while, casually threw them away. The situation on the battlefield is constantly changing, and what was originally a good situation suddenly becomes precarious. The reason is precisely that the D Army's Hydra unit is constantly producing new weapons, and according to the news transmitted by spies, the method of manufacturing these weapons turned out to be supernatural relics from the mythological era. Although somewhat bizarre, Petrovich, as the helmsman of the secret organization Red House in E-Country, still had to search for related items and events. How could it be so easy? Throwing the materials on the table, Petrovich walked out of the room and arrived at a laboratory. As soon as he entered, the researchers inside stopped and saluted, regardless of what they were doing. A living body that was being dissected had just made a sound when the researcher next to him accidentally cut his throat with a knife. And this unlucky dead guy turned out to be Sumu's landlord. What progress has been made? Petrovich walked freely in the massive laboratory, followed by a group of researchers. Sir, so far we have not obtained any valuable intelligence. We have dissected 37 people, and all aspects of their brain and body data are normal. However, we are confident that after dissecting all of these people, we will definitely find the truth about the collective nightmare incident. Petrovich nodded irrefutably, remained silent for a moment, and finally spoke again. This matter ends here, and we will make every effort to conquer the human body strengthening drug project. He still doesn't believe in those elusive things. Compared to nightmare time, he is more interested in enhancing the human body. After all, what is visible and tangible now is the most reliable. You should know that the nine-headed snake is extremely arrogant. Recently, their tracks have been found nearby, and the situation is not optimistic. Sir, will the participants of those nightmare events be put back? Petrovich's brow suddenly furrowed, and the person who spoke in fear trembled all over. Are you planning to do the experiment yourself, idiot? I'm sorry, sir. Petrovich snorted and ignored the person. I have already labeled the other person as useless in my heart. It's really ridiculous. Ordinary people who enter the Red Room either join or stay here forever. They don't even understand this common sense, they are really useless. He became increasingly agitated and decided to find a few newly arrived seedlings to extinguish the fire. This is a damn era. Chapter 3. Weakness is original sin, seeking flowers, evaluating. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days until a week later, Sumu, who had lost 10 pounds, realized that he had to do something. Because fewer and fewer people were being locked in with him, and none of the people who were called away could come back. Sumu wouldn't believe these people's words. They wouldn't be so idle, sending the prisoners back one by one. Watching several cells become increasingly empty. Sumu has made up his mind that even if exposed, he cannot do nothing. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect myself. Quickly, he entered a dream, still the familiar scene, eerie yet grand. Sumu tried to control his body to rush towards the nearest celestial body, but unfortunately his body remained motionless. Looking at the drifting black mist, Sumu suddenly remembered that he didn't need to breathe in his dream, and he had tried to smell the black mist here before. Is it? Thinking of this, Sumu's eyes flickered as he controlled this virtual body to swallow the black mist in large gulps. At the same time, his sleeping body in the cell continuously emitted black mist that ordinary human eyes could not see. As the black mist drifted away, everyone felt a palpitating sensation wherever they passed, as if something instinctively feared was approaching, yet powerless. Gradually, they became increasingly tired and even fell into nightmares. In just a few minutes, the entire base fell into a deadly silence. Prisoners, guards, researchers without exception, everyone fell into a dream. Beads of sweat as big as beans kept slipping down, fists unconsciously clenched, and expressions became increasingly distorted. Ah! Until a scream sounded somewhere, as if triggering some kind of switch, one after another screams kept ringing. Instantly turned the base into a dark and terrifying dungeon. Just as the mournful screams reached their peak. In Su Mumeng's dream, his body suddenly changed. He heard the sound of his own heartbeat, and at the same time, a language he had never heard before sounded in his ear, but he understood the meaning of the sentence. In Lalayet's palace, sleeping Cthulhu waits for dreams. At this moment, Su Mu suddenly sat up and left the dream. Before Su Mu could even examine the surroundings, another voice in his mind remembered. Nightmare Mist captured 2,132 intelligent life forms, successfully transformed 37 lower-level servants, met the system activation conditions, and the system has been activated. Su Mu sat against the wall, slowly closing his eyes, taking a few deep breaths, calming his excitement, and began to check the timely payment system. Evil God Descent System Evil God Level. LV.1-inch rewards obtained. Nightmare Fog. Can pull creatures within a 1,000-meter range into nightmare fog, absorb fear, and those with weak willpower have a chance to transform into servants. Nightmare Body. Can atomize the body at will. Fear Value. 2132 points. Fear points required for promotion to the next level. 100,000 points. Lower servants. 37. Fusible, convertible God. 1 place, belonging to God. 0-inch evaluation. Nightmares. The oldest and strongest emotion in humans is fear, and the oldest and strongest fear is fear of the unknown. Su Mu stared at the system panel with a background that resembled a dream scene, and a smile gradually appeared on his face, which became increasingly exaggerated. His mouth twitched to the extreme, but he didn't let out any laughter, looking both seductive and eerie. Really, really, really great. Su Mu has fully understood the current functions of the system and is overjoyed. He finally firmly grasped his fate in his hands. This world will definitely become even more wonderful, and Su Mu has already fallen in love with it. He stood up and scanned the cell, only to find that everyone was still in a dream. Cold sweat kept flowing, wetting the clothes. The eyelids kept bouncing, but they couldn't open them. The mouth was open, gasping heavily. One of them's situation is even more eerie, his facial features are melting, and only one mouth is left on his face, looking extremely terrifying. Su Mu seemed to have lost his ability to fear. In the past, seeing such a scene would probably startle him, but now, he just frowned slightly. Walking up to this person, with a gentle touch of the finger, a black mist rushed towards their face in a reckless manner. The smoke coiled like tentacles before disappearing. The facial features on this person unexpectedly reappeared. Weakness is the original sin. Su Mu murmured, there are 2 reasons why this person was hurt. Firstly, Su Mu was unable to control his own abilities at that time. The second reason is that this person's spirit is too weak, which is why they switched towards the direction of the evil servant in such a short period of time. This person is not the weakest either. Su Mu learned from the system that there are still 37 people in this base who have completely transformed into servants. Suddenly, strands of octopus-like black smoke emanated from Su Mu's body, and he climbed all over his body, eventually forming a huge black cloak. It's time to go and see my servants now. New book release, only looking at data, seeking everyone's support. Chapter 4. Thick Eyes and Eyes, Seeking Flowers, Evaluation Tickets. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The huge cloak is like a living creature, with various ugly and indescribable monsters devouring each other at the corners, constantly flowing and never stopping. The iron railing in the prison cell had no effect, and due to the cloak, Su Mu's feet could not be seen moving. His body seemed to be moving in the void, directly crossing the iron railing and walking outside. Every time someone passes by who has not yet fully transformed into a servant, a black mist-transformed monster will break free from its cloak and charge towards them. It was not until he reached the entrance of the cell on this floor that he stopped again and carefully examined the first servant he had seen. It is generally humanoid in shape, with a slender body and a tall stature of over 2 meters. It has huge wings similar to bats, and its face is surprisingly flat without any organs present. It is black all over and has a skin texture similar to rubber, very smooth. A demon-like long tail that is raised high, covered in sharp spikes, with an inverted triangular shape at the tail end, sharp and sharp. Powerful, eerie. At this moment it is folding its wings and prostrating on the ground, devoutly bowing. This is Su Mu's first servant. Night Nightmare. With just one glance, Su Mu's mind was filled with information about Nightmare. This is a subordinate servant with a very bad personality. Nightmares are creatures that inhabit nightmares, and the pleasure is to capture creatures that dare to offend their owners and bring them to the most terrifying places they can imagine for endless torture. Although its long tail has impressive attack power, its greatest use is actually scratching. Of course, the object is the unlucky one that falls into its hands. Rather than just scratching, it is actually using various annoying actions to make the other person restless and unable to eat, so the best way to eat is through the negative emotions of unlucky people towards it. What a bad guy. Su Mu grinned. He is a young man with ideals, morals, culture, and discipline. How could he have such subordinates? The art style of this system is not compatible with my temperament. I have long been detached from low-level fun. Su Mu secretly rose and walked through the nightmares, continuing to wander in the dead silence of the base. More and more servants followed behind him, giving a strong impression of the appearance of a villain. That way, TSK. It's simply indescribable. Saying it's a night of wandering ghosts, even demons and monsters are a bit insulting to these words. How ugly. Deep diver. A fish head with a human body, the main color of the body is grayish-green, the abdomen is white, there are fins between the fingers of the limbs, the body is covered with scales, the eyes protrude like fish eyes and do not close, the neck has gills, and when moving on land, it leaps forward with 2 feet or 4 limbs. Their hoarse and sharp throat sounds conveyed all dark emotions that their faces could not express. Su Mu. Ugly. Ghouls. Humanoid monsters with elastic skin like rubber, feet like hooves, faces like dogs, and pointed claws that speak in a rapid, crying voice. Because they often forage in graves, their bodies are mostly covered with fungi that grow in the graves. Su Mu. It's too ugly. Cold spider. A giant purple spider with a human face and a body covered in tumors. These tumors continue to wriggle, leaving behind a pale green juice. Its 8 long legs, like sickles, are covered with bristles. Su Mu. Mie Ba, spicy eyes. One by one is ugly. It's simply subverting the values. As an appearance association, Su Mu can't stand his little brother's appearance. The most crucial thing is that there are hardly any of these guys who can speak human language. Fortunately Su Mu can directly control them with his mind. Now there is no other choice but to reluctantly carry it with you. He decided to leave these guys behind when conditions permit. The handsome Su Mu couldn't have such an ugly and foolish subordinate. His subordinates, the first requirement is to have a good appearance, which is something that cannot be discussed with iron law. The space of the base was larger than expected, and it took Su Mu a full 10 minutes to reach the bottom floor at his current speed. This layer is the most tightly guarded area of the base, and the defense level gate of the vault has no effect on Su Mu. He can pass through directly, but the ugly 8 monster subordinates cannot pass through. So Su Mu decided to use this gate to test the strength of his subordinates. Open this door. Obedience, the great king in black, the source of primordial chaos, the master of the future and time, the terror of the starry sky, the master of the abyss sea. Cough cough, it's okay. After you can speak, speak more. Now go open the door first. The titles referred to by the subordinates were varied, and Su-mu sounded ethereal. He felt full of confidence, but suddenly realized that these servants didn't seem so unattractive either. For example, the deep diver who had the most tricks just now, no matter how big your eyes were, they could be considered thick eyebrows and big eyes. A cold spider was the first to take action, approaching the astonishingly thick alloy gate, and its abdomen suddenly swelled up like a silkworm pupa. I saw a lump on my body suddenly burst, and nauseating juice spewed out on the door, emitting a thick green smoke. Chapter 5. You are not eligible. Seeking fresh flowers and comments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Silala. The gate was corroded at a visible speed to the naked eye. The cold spider seemed unsatisfied, and its abdomen swelled up again. Su-mu quickly shouted to stop and let it spray again, leaving only smoke in the passage. He kicked the big frog deep diver with a clear eyebrow and eyes, gesturing for it to come. Thank you for giving me the honor of being a pioneer. Praise you, the great black-clothed one. Su-mu choked silently. These guys don't have brains, they definitely don't. Fortunately, without the order of Su-mu, the dog-faced ghoul's body was pounded, accumulating strength and suddenly catapulting. Its sharp claws drew shadows in the air, and it quickly. The dog started digging at the door. Su-mu supported his forehead, completely speechless. Although the actions of the ghoul are not very good, the effect is good. Apart from the unpleasant sound generated by the friction of the claws on the metal, there is no fault to be found. In less than 10 seconds, a gateway had been dug open for Su-mu to pass through. After digging open the door, the ghoul ran to Su-mu and squatted on the ground like a begging puppy, with a spiky head stretching out and constantly exhaling. Watching its forelimbs corroded by cold spider venom and brutally excavated metal, Su-mu admitted that he was moved. This ugly guy has learned to be cute, it's not easy for everyone, so he symbolically touched the dog's head as a reward. With just a gentle stroke, the ghoul trembled with excitement, like a madman. Su-mu was unable to roast and strode into the passageway. The decoration style here was completely different from that before. Unlike the uniform gray walls on the other floors, the exposed pipes, this is like another world, with clean floors, bright lights, and simple yet not simple decorations on both sides of the aisle. Everything reveals that this is a high-rise living area. At the same time, Slaw. The piercing sound echoed through the hall, and in the deep laboratory of the base, many people had already woken up from nightmares. Anyone who woke up early due to this sound had one thing in common. That was their eyes, which became very dim at this moment, like dying animals losing their spirituality. The hair on the forehead was soft and tightly pressed against the scalp, making it look very comical, but coupled with that confused look, it couldn't be laughed at. Several researchers who woke up early remained motionless, just staring blankly at the white ceiling, as if there were the ultimate mysteries of the universe. Pop 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 pop. Suddenly, the sound of gunshots echoed in a closed environment, deafening. It was the sound of gunfire that woke everyone nearby up at the same time, and their eyes also showed signs of excitement. The thought that seemed frozen by fear just now finally turned again. Who? The loud gasps and the sound of swallowing saliva forcefully echoed in the hall. They quickly got up from the ground and looked at each other in terror. No one spoke. As long as they were not fools, they could understand how strange what had just happened. Moreover, when these scientists experienced the great terror just now, their feelings were more profound than those of ordinary people. Cack, hiss. The mechanical lock of the hydraulic gate in the laboratory rotated, and the pneumatic valve emitted white steam, which startled the people in the laboratory. Many people's first reaction was to close their eyes, hug their heads, and squat down. I was clearly frightened quite a bit. The startled bird is like nothing else. Fortunately, the next scene did not break their tense heartstrings, and the terrifying images of fear in their hearts did not appear on the display. Dream, it was just a dream, everything has passed. A researcher with slightly bald hair looked at the demon that usually made them extremely afraid and muttered incessantly. He never realized that the usual unpredictable, bloodthirsty, and cruel person could give him such a sense of security. Petrovich walked in with dozens of his subordinates, pale-faced. The joint of the palm holding the pistol turned slightly white, indicating a tight grip. Seeing that there were no abnormalities in the laboratory, he finally breathed a sigh of relief. The situation just now was too strange. Perhaps due to his strong willpower, he was the first person to wake up on the entire base. Although the scenes in his dream made him afraid to recall, they did not make him lose his fighting spirit. He wanted to solve the abnormal situation here, so carrying a pistol and grenade, he woke up the guard lying at his doorstep, and the team grew stronger and stronger. The firearms in hand and the increasing fear towards people dissipated a lot. However, they encountered a strong monster with an extremely ugly appearance and a dog face and human body. Petrovich's first reaction was to shoot, followed by more than a dozen guns spitting out their tongues of fire, and bullets pouring down on the monster that was frozen in place. To Petrovich's peace of mind, the monster let out a mournful scream after being hit by a bullet, with dark and corrupt blood flowing through its body. As long as it can be harmed by firearms. Those who can be killed have no right to become my fear. Chapter 6. Divine Descent. Add more and send it as a gift, please. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Petrovich threw a grenade at the monster evading bullets, but it disappeared with an unbearable scream and the roar of the explosion. Here returns to silence. However, Petrovich's furrowed brow had not yet relaxed, and he suddenly realized that the monster had not died. It uses its limbs together, constantly walking upstream of the walls and ceiling, leaving behind bloodstains everywhere. Its ugly and uneven fangs roll out, emitting a vicious low roar. The muscular limbs firmly grasped the wall, and the razor-like claws sank into the wall, leaving scratch marks every time they moved. Thorny pull. Without waiting for Petrovich to continue shooting, the monster in an attacking posture suddenly turned its head and looked towards the other side of the passage, causing it to give up the counterattack and rush towards that direction without hesitation. This made Petrovich even more uneasy in his heart. What is he going to do? Is it? He is very familiar with the habits of beasts, and generally carnivorous beasts have a strong sense of revenge. Unless there is fear or serious injury, they will give up revenge. But that guy just now was clearly not afraid of them, and judging from the speed at which he left, the injury was definitely not serious. Petrovich suddenly thought of a possibility that made his heart twitch. There is a stronger creature calling for it. He cannot show the panic in his heart. If he shows a weak side at this moment, the momentum of the entire team will immediately dissipate. The only way now is to gather more people, obtain more weapons, and then clean up the entire base. When in despair, people tend to lean closer together. When Petrovich came in, not only did the researchers find the backbone, but Petrovich himself was also refreshed. At least I haven't seen any monsters here, there are still so many living forces, and the familiar sense of control is returning. Rest for 3 minutes, get ready to arm and patrol the base with me. Petrovich's voice remained calm as usual. Seeing his appearance, the panic in other people's hearts immediately subsided by half. The guards began to distribute firearms in an orderly manner, without making any noise throughout the entire process. The chief scientist of the laboratory, Raswal, walked up to Petrovich and whispered. "Sir, all of this should be related to nightmare time, and the person who triggered this incident should still be on it." Petrovich looked in the direction of his fingers and didn't speak, obviously he also thought of it. "Should we seek help?" After thinking for a while, Byklovic finally spoke up. The soldiers at the upper level of the base are currently unreachable. If we can wake them up smoothly, everything will still be under control. As for seeking help, we haven't reached this point yet. The eerie and chaotic footsteps and strange chants suddenly came from a distance, and a dark and eerie aura also approached. Order controller, dark controller. G. They are quite familiar with this feeling. The same formula, the same taste, but not so rich. Only this faint scent awakened their fear in their dreams. Trembling, despair just showing signs of improvement, quickly collapsing. Petrovich gritted his teeth tightly, and sweat as big as beans instantly covered his forehead. Dong! He suddenly fired a shot at the ceiling. Shouted loudly, "The people of E-country are never afraid." Bula. But his inspiring effect is not good, because everyone can see the existence of spreading fear. That was an existence wrapped in a robe that looked like a living creature, making it impossible to see directly. The black mist evolved into various unimaginable but extremely terrifying monsters, still constantly fighting. His robe dragged on the ground, but his feet were nowhere to be seen, as if black mist was supporting him as he walked. Black mist repeatedly rose up, forming a magnificent star map above his head that was described in words. Just glancing at it, my mind felt a sharp pain, and incomprehensible murmurs echoed in my mind, as if it was about to fill my entire brain, making it impossible to think. Behind him were dozens of ugly and ferocious giant monsters, guarding behind him, afraid to cross the thunder pit for half a step. What was seen from the crazy eyes of those monsters was actually fanaticism. Fire. However, no one responded. Petrovich only glanced at it, but dared not look again. He decisively fired a shot. At this moment, he had to do something, and firearms were the only refuge. The bullet shot rapidly from the barrel and charged straight towards the black-robed man. Time seemed to slow down at this moment, and the focus was on the bullet. Hit. Petrovich's goal was achieved but also failed. The bullet seemed to have sunk into the water, leaving only a faint ripple on the black robe before disappearing. The black-robed man's footsteps continued without stopping, and the bullets did not cause any harm. The only change may be that the incomprehensible chanting stops for a moment and then continues to sound. Everything is in vain. Sumu arrived with suffocating fear, looking down at Petrovich, who was trembling all over. His voice was melodious and majestic, like a true deity. Stare at me, submit to me, worship me, and then I will grant you liberation. Chapter 7 My name. Su. Add more and send it as a gift. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Petrovich's mind is filled with various negative emotions. The only clear reason is to be able to determine something now. The terrifying presence within reach is the source of all fear. It's him spreading fear, it's him giving death. He is the master of that nightmare. Kill him, as long as you kill him, everything will come to an end. Having experienced countless dark years, the executioner Petrovich of E-country is worthy of the title of Devil. In such extreme circumstances, his only thought was to fight back. Sumu's expression hidden in the shadow of the huge hood also became playful. The guy in front of me was a bit unexpected, he didn't kneel on the ground like everyone else in the room. The next moment, he couldn't laugh anymore. I saw a dagger piercing into the heart. Despite not suffering any harm, a wave of anger still surged into my mind. Sure enough, in this era, there can't be any compassion. His eyes froze as several ugly tentacles suddenly protruded from his black robe at the heart. The farther away these tentacles were from Sumu, the larger they grew, instantly enveloping Petrovich. Ah! It is unimaginable that such a mournful cry could be emitted from the human mouth, almost a mournful cry of the soul. Almost half a laboratory-sized tentacle meandered layer by layer, lifting Petrovich up high, like a massive suction cup bursting with unparalleled power, secreting disgusting mucus that covered Petrovich's entire body. Let his skin and flesh rise with thick smoke. The tentacles emitting an evil aura slowly wriggled and tightened, like real terrifying creatures, strangling them to death. Dong! The huge tentacles composed of black mist completed their mission and returned to Sumu's body like a spiritual being. And Petrovich twisted his limbs, with many of his flesh gone, revealing flesh and yellow fat, lying on the ground like an abandoned rag doll. The singer of all things, the god of frozen ice. The astonishingly skilled deep-sea diver, pressing against the bullet hole on his body, was still reciting the name it had given to Sumyuki. Don't read it yet. I'll read it slowly when I have time. I'll reward you with this. The shot just now passed through Sumu and hit this unlucky guy. Sumu decided to reward Petrovich to him as revenge for this subordinate. Sumu watched as no one stood in the huge laboratory, his body slowly rising. Grant you the right to believe in me. Everyone pressed their foreheads tightly to the ground, with no thoughts in their minds. Instinctively but subconsciously, they react by rapidly secreting various hormones in the body, causing them to either vomit, spasm, or laugh loudly in a low voice. Sumu grinned, his carefully designed lines triggered this effect, and it was unclear whether he was happy or not at this point. He no longer had the idea of maintaining his power and only wanted to end it quickly. He could no longer bear such a crumbling art style. He felt that he was gradually distancing himself from words like sunshine, justice, heroes, and so on. My name. Su. As Sumu opened his arms, countless small black mist like cow hair shot out, flying in all directions without any obstacles that could stop them. However, in a moment, all the black mist found its place of belonging, and the mysterious and majestic image of Sumu appeared in the minds of everyone in the entire base. At the same time, the spirit has also been restored to normal. Su, Su, Su. The sound gradually unified and echoed throughout the entire base, creating a somewhat eerie and harmonious sense of divinity. In this way, Sumu completely took control of this base. He never expected that the name, King of Black Su, would start from here and resound throughout the entire multiverse. 3 days later, in the most luxurious room of the underground base, Sumu removed the black mist from his body, like an elegant aristocratic youth sitting at the dining table, gently cutting the steak. Beside him, 2 exceptionally beautiful agents were serving on both sides. My lord, the great one who returns all things to zero, the one who awakens from slumber, the humble believer Laswal pays homage to you. The chief scientist of Red House, Raswal, knelt on the ground and paid his respects with all his body thrown to the ground. It's not that Sumu asked them to do this, but rather that the nightmare mist has entered their bodies, affecting their thinking. They have now become immune to fear, leaving only the most devout faith. In the eyes of every believer, there are differences in the image of Sumu. This difference stems from the combination of strength and fear in their deepest minds, giving birth to the supreme image. These people have not changed much in other aspects except for becoming a bit talkative. However, the more devout they are, the mist of nightmares in their minds will also grow, and the direct benefit is that their physical fitness is constantly improving. Get up and talk. Sumu put down the tableware, and a red-haired girl beside him bent down and wiped the corners of Sumu's mouth with a napkin at the right time. The expression on his beautiful face looked extremely enjoyable. It seems that serving Sumu is the highest honor in her life. Sumu has adapted to the licking behavior of the believers. He admitted that he had been corroded. Chapter 8. I passing by. Seeking fresh flowers and comments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My lord, country, the June department has begun to doubt whether Petrovich is alive, and the special inspector should arrive today. Sumu leaned back on the chair, her fair fingers tapping on the table, making a devout sound. He thought Petrovich was one of the governors here at the time, but he didn't expect him to be the highest leader here. Now the world is shrouded in the shadow of war, and every country has particularly strict internal control. 1,000 miles of lifting, collapsing in an ant colony. Everyone understands this principle. Petrovich almost reports the situation to headquarters every day, and occasionally no one pays attention when he loses contact. However, it has been several days now, and the situation finally cannot be kept hidden. Although Su Mu is very satisfied with his current situation, what should come will always come, and it's not a big deal. If it's a big deal, just repeat the old trick. Only 2 hours later, Su Mu received the news. The inspector has arrived at the base. The number of people coming was less than Su Mu had imagined, with a total of 12 people. The leader had a scar on his face and exuded an aura of iron blood all over his body. At a glance, he knew he was a fierce general. As soon as these people got off the car, Su Mu immediately took action without any nonsense. With a flick of his finger, the mist of nightmares came in an instant, exploding and enveloping the group. A few people fell straight to the ground and were instantly dragged into a nightmare. In just a few minutes, they felt as if they had been picked up from the water and knelt down on the ground, with a devout expression on their faces. Easy to handle, Su Mu lazily turned around and prepared to walk back, and the rest of the things would naturally be taken care of by others. Just as Su Mu turned around, Scar Man suddenly remembered something and quickly checked his watch. Then his face changed drastically and he said urgently. "Sir, we have exposed it. The real inspector already knows there is a problem." Su Mu suddenly turned around. "I am the deputy of the inspector, and he and the guards are just 2 kilometers away. We have agreed that if I see Officer Petrovich when I come in, I must contact him immediately. If there is no contact, it means there is a problem with the Red Chamber. And now, the agreed time has passed." Su Mu sighed and underestimated these people. Indeed, this is not a false world. No one who can hold high positions is a fool. I just hope there's still time. Su Mu's body exploded and turned into a black mist, flying rapidly towards the outside of the base. The distance of 2 kilometers was instantly reached, but the inspector mentioned by Scarface had already driven in the opposite direction. The black mist transformed by Su Mu chased up to the sky, and as he grabbed down, the huge towering claws directly grabbed towards the rapidly departing car. Click. The car was directly gripped by the claws, causing the metal carriage to twist and deform instantly, and several people inside the car were also pulled into a nightmare at the same time. However, Su Mu's expression was even more ugly. "Jurovic, what happened on your end?" A concerned voice of an old man can be heard on the radio in the car. Looking at the 2 people who had just fallen asleep in the car, Su Mu knew it was too late to wake them up again. He didn't have many means now and there was no better solution. On second thought, the other person couldn't do anything to themselves. Fortunately, they came to this magnificent world. Why live like a mouse? Thinking about this, he simply spoke up. "Do you believe that he fell asleep?" The sound on the radio suddenly came to an end, and after a moment, he said. "Who are you?" "A native of D country." No, I said I passed by, so you wouldn't believe me." The radio station was quiet again, and after a few seconds, the old man said gloomily. "No matter who you are, this is country E, you will pay the price. I'll wait and see, but I hope you take a look at Ramsey City before making a decision." After Su Mu finished speaking, he threw away the radio intercom and clenched his huge claws, violently crushing the car. The 2 people inside the car instantly turned into flesh and mud. "Since fate has chosen me, then we must cut off the past with caution. Evil gods, of course, you have to look like an evil god." Jia, cough, laughing like this is a bit too neutral. Su Mu muttered to himself and flew to Ramsey City. M City in E country, military headquarters. The office was filled with smoke, and the 3 people in the room had a solemn expression, constantly swallowing the smoke of cigars, without any interest in the mellow taste of luxury cigars. In a day, 100,000 people have already been unconscious. said the younger man, Alexei, with a heavy voice. This is a threat. We cannot compromise. The bearded Trekov was furious and his face turned red, clearly furious to the extreme. The two argued happily, one advocating negotiation and the other advocating strong suppression. He believed that hidden dangers within the country must be eliminated with a thunderous force. Finally, the elderly man with white hair sitting at the top crushed the cigar and said with one stroke. Trekov, I'll leave it to you. We'll use cover bombing, Alexei. You're responsible for rebuilding the Red House, that's it. Yes, sir. X2. Chapter 9. All Things Fear. Seeking Fresh Flowers and Evaluations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Poor Ramsey City, once again shot while lying down, I don't know where to go. Su Mu, this guy from the blood mold stall, made people feel anxious. Under the low temperature of -40, groups of people gathered in the auditorium, attempting to dispel fear with the number of people. The relaxation of religious policies at the beginning of this year has given these poor people some spiritual support. The priest, who had been unemployed for many years, constantly prayed and recited the Bible to soothe everyone's emotions. Just from the priest's worried face, it seems that he is not very confident in his professional skills. Panic is still spreading. The most tragic ones are those who were taken away with Su Mu last time, escaped life and death, just returned from the front foot, and something even more terrifying happened in the back foot. However, they were the most calm in the entire city. They were a bit restless, but not afraid. Instead, they had an impulse to worship the dark clouds in the sky. So many people can be seen kneeling on the ground praying to the dark clouds. A day ago, a huge dark cloud that covered the sky and sun suddenly descended, covering an area of about 1 kilometer. As the clouds moved, all the people below fell asleep on the ground, without exception. Fortunately, the location where the dark clouds crossed was only a quarter of the city, which prevented the entire city from becoming a ghost. No one knows how long this will end, let alone what their future fate will be. That eerie dark cloud was Su Mu, who was fully unleashing the nightmare fog. He dragged 100,000 people into a nightmare, firstly to showcase his power to the upper echelons of each country, and secondly to prepare for war. Su Mu is quite satisfied with his previous situation, and he has his own plans in mind, so he doesn't want to abandon the existing team. So there is only one foolproof solution, which is to be so powerful that everyone fears and kneels down to worship. Bringing in 100,000 people at once is not difficult for Su Mu. The difficulty is that he also needs to control his strength to prevent these people from becoming servants or dying. If it's an enemy, he can be ruthless. But he is not a true evil god who can contempt all beings, let alone these innocent ordinary people. He doesn't know what the future holds, but one thing is certain. He will never become a puppet of power. Finally, at the dawn, people in the city are gradually awakening, and the dark clouds in the sky are also disappearing. People kneel in front of the statue to praise the greatness of the gods. The smile on his face was so bright. So ignorant. Su Mu bathed in the morning light, walking in the void, gazing at the fear level on the system panel, and choosing to be promoted to the next level. 100,000 fear points disappear. The space within a few tens of meters around Su Mu's body began to wriggle restlessly, like melted paint, unreal, dazed, twisted. The only thing that remains true and unchanged is his body. Evil God level. LV.2-inch rewards obtained. Nightmare arrival. Can pull creatures within a 100-kilometer radius into the nightmare, absorb fear, and those with weak willpower are likely to transform into servants. Fear body. Within a maximum range of 1,000 meters, your existence is feared by all things. Evil God's shadow. Summons the projection of the original existence of an unknown, unpredictable, and indescribable place. Fear value. 4263 points. Fear points required for promotion to the next level. 10 million points. Lower servants. 37, fusible, convertible gods. 2 places, belonging to God. 0-inch evaluation. Death. What sleeps forever is not the dead, and in a long and strange time, death also has its end. M City, military headquarters. Big bearded Trekov hung up the phone, his rough face showing a disdainful smile. You're such a softy, you dare not even kill anyone. I thought it was some kind of tough guy. He stood up from his desk, walked to the mirror, tidied up his military appearance, and walked towards the combat command room with his head and chest held high. Many people have gathered here, waiting for Trekov to give the final order. 5La-7 fighter jets galloping the world battlefield have been loaded with missiles and are ready, and tank companies and ground troops have all arrived at designated positions. Just need Trekov's command, the war machine will destroy everything. Chui Kafu checked the battle plan and was about to give an order when Alexei suddenly burst in. General Trekov, the crisis in Ramsey City has been resolved. The other party is showing goodwill, and we should reconsider negotiating with them. Chui Kafu furrowed his brow and cursed a fool in secret. The two had known each other for many years, and his gentle behavior style made him very dissatisfied. Since he has obtained the permission of the highest official now, he wouldn't listen to this soft guy's advice. Before Alex could walk in, he immediately ordered the radio station, "Let's take action." 5La-7 fighter jets quickly took off from the military base. The tank company and ground troops not far from the Red House base were launched with a loud bang. The gears of the war machine have started to turn, and everything will be irreversible. At this point, there is nothing more to say about Alexei. He understands Trekov's behavior because they all love this country. It's just a different approach. In this chaotic and confused era, no one can be certain that the path they have taken will be correct. Now, all he hopes for is himself. Chapter 10. There are monsters. Seeking fresh flowers and evaluations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the Red House base, everyone already knows the news of the impending enemy attack and understands what kind of presence is standing on their opposite side. That's a whole country. That was the greatest existence in their hearts. However, they are not afraid, and almost everyone's eyes are filled with fanaticism. They frantically arm themselves, attempting to use their weak bodies and light firepower to counter the metal flood. If Su Mu saw it now, he would probably only say 2 words. Silly X. When there is no strength to resist, not choosing to escape is useless. Holding a broken base is useless. However, perhaps it will be moving afterwards. Perhaps Su Mu is right, but his followers don't think so. They will defend the palace of the Lord with their will. Defend the title of Lord with blood. Defend the majesty of the Lord with your life. This is their ultimate glory. They are not afraid of life and death, except when facing the Lord, they have already lost the emotion of fear. The only regret is that the Lord has not returned and may not be able to see their battle scenes. Chief Scientist Raswal has injected himself with a human reinforcement drug that is still in the experimental stage. 7 co-believers who injected with him died, while only he and the other 2 survived. All of this is arranged by the Lord. The souls of deceased believers return to the embrace of the great king in black, Su. And they are the chosen warriors. The old man, apart from his graying hair, had high and bulging muscles on his body, even increasing his height significantly. He was completely like a devil's flesh and blood man with his face on his head. He took the lead and dispersed all the forces behind the truck standing outside the base gate. He held a heavy machine gun similar to a cannon in one hand, which was just unloaded from the tank. The battle is imminent. The first to arrive were 5 fighter jets that had cut through the clouds. Lasval spat out his cigarette butt and pointed his heavy machine gun at the far end of the fighter jet, saying to the dozen or so nightmares floating overhead. Servants and adults, please. More than a dozen nightmares, although unable to speak, can understand human language. Their faith is far more devout than these people, and they are already starving and thirsty. Carrying a fierce killing intent, fanning its huge bat wings, its body piercing into the sky like a sharp sword. The top speed of the La-7 fighter jet during low-altitude flight is 600 km per hour, and the top speed that Nightmare erupted in a short period of time is no slower than that of the La-7. "What is that?" the driver exclaimed in surprise. "Be careful." Two Nightmares flew directly over the fighter, flying side by side, with their inverted triangular tails piercing straight into the fighter cabin. The sturdy bulletproof glass was instantly punctured and cracked, causing the frightened pilot to quickly control the fighter jet to dodge. "Be careful of these monsters, shoot quickly." However, there was no response, and everyone was too busy to dodge the attacks of these monsters in the air. But machinery has the advantage of being tireless. Biology also has its benefits, and even a good fighter jet cannot compare to an eagle's agility in the air. They missed the only opportunity from the beginning. It's already too late now, and the moment Nightmare approaches, the death knell has already sounded. Boom! A fighter jet burst out dazzling flames on the ground. Other fighter jets are also at risk. Listening to the frightened screams on the radio, Trekhov's eyes turned red with blood. Monsters! What kind of monster can knock down a fighter jet? The unease in his heart made his heart beat violently, and he exclaimed in a daze. "The ground troops haven't arrived yet. Let's work together. The captain of the tank company can't roast. No matter how skillful he is, he can't hit those monsters in the sky. Those monsters are terrifyingly fast, and so far he has not been able to fully see them." However, the ground combat was under his control, and the moving steel fortress caused the enemy to suffer heavy casualties before they could approach. In addition, with the artillery barrage washing the ground, victory seems to be only a matter of time. "Sir, the ground situation is under control. Chui Kafu is now more at ease." But unfortunately, the captain quickly retracted his earlier words. The voice was as panicked as those pilots just now. "Report, sir, request support, there are monsters, they can tear open the tank's protection." Trekhov's heart instantly plummeted to the bottom, and Ali Baba, who had been silently waiting for the result, finally spoke out. "Let's reinforce it. Since it has already started, we cannot stop. Victory must belong to Country E." 20 La-7 planes quickly take off and rush to the battlefield at their maximum speed. At this moment, the situation on the ground battlefield turned rapidly, with nearly half of the casualties. With the believers attracting firepower, the ghouls and cold spiders finally approached the tank troops. The giant cold spider continuously stabbed the tank with sickle-like long legs, while the disgusting tumors on its body burst, splashing out highly corrosive juice. The thick smoke rising from the corrosion of the juice on the metal almost obscured the view, making everyone on this battlefield blind, and the ghoul took this opportunity to use its unique skill. Dog planing. 1, 2, 3.